For almost 40 years, one operating system quietly ruled the world's computers, until a single political decision changed everything. Nobody expected the next serious challenge to Windows would begin with sanctions instead of software innovation. Inside one Chinese company, engineers realized the technology they depended on could disappear almost overnight.
The decision was political, but its consequences would reshape phones, computers, and the future of global software.
Within weeks, Huawei found itself losing access to two technology ecosystems that the modern digital world depended upon.
Most companies would have accepted defeat. Huawei quietly chose something far more difficult, rebuilding everything from the beginning.
Behind closed doors, a project began that almost nobody outside the company even knew existed.
5 years later, that hidden project would evolve into something capable of challenging software once considered untouchable.
To understand how this happened, we have to return to the moment Huawei's future changed forever. May 2019.
That announcement lasted only minutes on television, but it quietly triggered one of technology's most ambitious rebuilding efforts ever attempted. In May 2019, one government decision instantly transformed Huawei from a global technology champion into an international uncertainty. The company was placed on the Entity List, restricting American firms from supplying critical technology without government approval. Almost immediately, Google could no longer provide the services that made Android phones feel complete for international customers. The phones still looked familiar, but millions of users instantly noticed something essential had disappeared from everyday life. Outside China, consumer confidence weakened almost overnight as buyers questioned whether Huawei devices still had a reliable future. Revenue forecasts changed dramatically, but the company understood something even more dangerous had just happened beneath the numbers. The pressure reached beyond smartphones because modern Windows laptops also depended heavily on American hardware and software partnerships. Restrictions surrounding advanced chips quietly threatened Huawei's long-term computer business just as seriously as its mobile ambitions. Windows was never banned outright, yet every new restriction made the partnership feel increasingly uncertain for Huawei's future. At that moment, Huawei stopped asking how to survive the sanctions and started asking how never to depend on them again. What happened next would remain almost completely invisible, because rebuilding an operating system happens behind closed doors, not on headlines. Creating an entirely independent operating system meant replacing millions of interconnected software components that most users would never even notice. This was not a glamorous product launch. It became thousands of ordinary workdays slowly building something extraordinarily difficult. Every dependency tied to Android had to be examined, rewritten, or completely replaced before true independence became possible. Years passed with almost nothing visible to the outside world, yet the project quietly grew stronger with every successful milestone. Many critics believed Huawei was simply renaming Android, unaware that the real transformation was still happening behind the scenes. The company accepted years of public skepticism because proving everyone wrong required patience rather than publicity. 5 years quietly disappeared as thousands of engineering decisions slowly shaped a completely different future for Huawei.
When HarmonyOS NEXT finally arrived, the project had evolved far beyond surviving sanctions. It was becoming an entire technology ecosystem.
For the first time, the story stopped being only about smartphones and quietly became a story Microsoft could no longer ignore. HarmonyOS NEXT wasn't simply another operating system. It became Huawei's first complete technology ecosystem built without depending on Android. For the first time, the company controlled every critical software layer, instead of borrowing someone else's foundation.
Instead of building separate systems for every device, Huawei connected everything into one continuous digital experience.
Every connected device became another part of the same operating system, sharing information almost instantly without complicated setup. Apple had spent years perfecting this idea. Huawei was now attempting something equally ambitious across an even larger domestic market. Connecting every device was impressive. Making them stable, secure, and reliable required engineering work on an entirely different scale. Thousands of internal tests quietly prepared HarmonyOS for real-world conditions long before most people even noticed its progress. Removing Android compatibility created a difficult challenge because developers suddenly needed entirely new applications for the platform. The transition demanded enormous effort, yet Huawei believed complete independence mattered far more than short-term convenience. Without realizing it, the world had reached a turning point. Huawei was no longer rebuilding phones, it was preparing to challenge Windows itself. Building the software was only half the battle. Convincing an entire nation to trust it would prove even harder. China represents the world's largest personal computer market, making every operating system decision strategically important for the future. After the sanctions, technology independence became more than a business objective. It increasingly became a matter of national strategy. For many public institutions, depending entirely on foreign software suddenly appeared far less comfortable than before. Replacing Windows was never as simple as installing different software. Entire organizations had been built around it for decades. Behind every desktop lived countless specialized applications that businesses relied upon every single working day. Changing an operating system meant protecting years of accumulated data, security policies, and mission-critical workflows without interruption. Migration required rewriting software, retraining employees, and carefully rebuilding systems that were never designed to change.
Every successful migration represented another small step toward reducing long-term dependence on foreign technology providers.
Windows remained dominant, but for the first time in decades, a credible domestic alternative had finally entered the conversation.
And another opportunity quietly appeared, arriving not through politics alone, but through an ordinary software deadline affecting millions of computers.
As Windows 10 approached the end of support, organizations everywhere faced an unavoidable decision about what came next. For many Chinese institutions, this upgrade became more than routine maintenance. It became the perfect moment to reconsider long-term technology dependence. Replacing software is expensive, but continuing with unfamiliar risks can become even more costly over the years. Suddenly, years of Huawei's quiet engineering work aligned almost perfectly with a nationwide technology transition already underway. Huawei was no longer introducing another phone. It was introducing a complete workplace built around its own operating system. Office software, printers, and everyday business tools suddenly became just as important as flashy product launches. Winning businesses required something simple. Every employee had to finish today's work without noticing tomorrow's operating system underneath. Reliability mattered far more than excitement, because businesses measure success by stability, not headlines. Huawei understood something many competitors overlooked. It did not need to conquer the world, only its own home market first.
Huawei's strategy was surprisingly modest. It did not need global victory, it only needed enough momentum to become impossible to ignore.
A successful operating system can survive for decades if one large market provides enough users, developers, and long-term investment. The real competition was unfolding inside conference rooms, where purchasing decisions quietly shaped technology for years to come.
Every signed agreement represented another organization willing to reduce its dependence on technology developed somewhere else.
An operating system cannot succeed alone. It survives only when developers believe its future is worth building.
Every new application quietly strengthened the platform, making it increasingly practical for businesses considering a future beyond Windows. Young African-American engineers entering the workforce began learning technologies designed for a future no longer centered around foreign operating systems. Every generation of developers shapes tomorrow's software industry long before customers ever notice the change. Years of quiet engineering had finally reached the point where patience was beginning to produce measurable results. The question was no longer whether HarmonyOS could work. The question had become where it would spread next. Most people assumed HarmonyOS would remain a Chinese story. Huawei quietly had a much larger map already unfolding.
Beyond China, Huawei already operated trusted communications networks across dozens of countries, built over many years.
Those existing relationships quietly created something far more valuable than advertising. They created long-term institutional trust.
When one company already helps keep national communications running, expanding into neighboring technologies becomes considerably easier.
For many governments, resilience gradually became just as important as price or technical performance.
Software independence increasingly sounded less like politics and more like long-term risk management. Countries modernizing their infrastructure often looked beyond familiar technology suppliers in search of greater strategic flexibility. For many decision-makers, reducing dependence on any single foreign supplier became an increasingly attractive long-term objective. Technology leadership rarely spreads overnight. It expands quietly through relationships built patiently over many years. Huawei was no longer competing only with products. It was competing with decades of established trust, habit, and global influence.
The longer this strategy continued, the clearer its real objective quietly became. Huawei was building technological
Every successful connection demonstrated something larger than convenience. It proved an independent ecosystem could finally stand on its own. Winning confidence required far more than impressive technology. Organizations needed proof that daily operations would remain uninterrupted. Trust is earned quietly through reliability, especially where security and uninterrupted service matter more than impressive marketing. Years of preparation were slowly transforming into practical deployment across organizations willing to embrace a different technological future. By now, the project had evolved beyond replacing software. It was becoming an entirely self-contained technology ecosystem. Outside China, Huawei already possessed something priceless: long-standing relationships built through years of communications infrastructure projects. Those trusted partnerships created opportunities that many competitors could never simply purchase or quickly imitate.
For many governments, technological independence increasingly represented stability rather than political symbolism alone.
The question was quietly changing across the technology industry. Could one company truly challenge decades of Windows dominance?
Ironically, the restrictions designed to slow Huawei had accomplished something very different. They had forced the company to reinvent itself.
Every obstacle became another reason to replace foreign technology with something Huawei could completely control.
The transformation reached beyond software. Huawei also accelerated efforts to strengthen every layer of its technology supply chain.
True independence requires more than writing software. It demands confidence that critical hardware can continue evolving despite external pressure.
Piece by piece, Huawei assembled a technology ecosystem designed to reduce reliance on suppliers beyond its direct control. What began as a response to sanctions quietly evolved into an integrated platform connecting hardware, software, and digital services. The broader lesson reached far beyond Huawei. Entire industries were beginning to reconsider the risks of technological dependence. Around the world, governments increasingly questioned whether essential digital infrastructure should rely entirely on technology developed somewhere else.
Huawei's experience had quietly become a case study, watched closely by countries planning their own long-term technology strategies.
The conversation had quietly shifted from one company's survival to the future balance of technological power itself. Yet one important fact remained unchanged. Windows still powered the overwhelming majority of computers across the world. Replacing decades of trusted software requires far more than building an alternative. It demands changing deeply established habits. From hospitals to airports, countless organizations still depended on Windows because reliability often outweighs the excitement of something new. Many business systems were written years earlier, making every operating system migration a carefully planned, expensive undertaking. Microsoft understood these challenges better than anyone because Windows had survived countless technological shifts before. Windows continued evolving through constant security updates, enterprise improvements, and decades of compatibility trusted by businesses worldwide. This was no longer a battle between products. It had become a competition between entirely different technology philosophies. One represented decades of global leadership. The other represented an ambitious vision shaped by necessity. Ultimately, technology succeeds where customers, developers, and businesses choose to invest their confidence for the future. The future would not be decided by headlines alone. It would be shaped quietly through millions of choices made every single day. Huawei's greatest achievement may not be replacing Windows. It may be proving another path is genuinely possible. For years, complete technological independence sounded almost impossible. Now, it had become a working demonstration. Software, hardware, and cloud services were no longer separate projects. Together, they formed one carefully connected strategy.
Every successful breakthrough reduced dependence on technologies once considered impossible to replace.
The next generation of engineers would grow up viewing technological independence as an achievable engineering challenge, not an unrealistic ambition. Countries watching from the sidelines were no longer asking whether independence was possible. They were asking whether they should begin. If more nations choose that direction, the global technology landscape could gradually become far more competitive than before. Technology ecosystems rarely spread overnight. They expand patiently through partnerships, investment, and years of growing confidence. The competition ahead may shape far more than computers. It could influence how nations think about technological sovereignty itself. The world had entered a new chapter where resilience, independence, and trust would matter just as much as innovation. 5 years earlier, almost nobody believed this journey would end, with Huawei building an entirely independent computing platform. What began as survival eventually became something much larger, a complete ecosystem designed to stand on its own. Every engineer, every redesign, and every difficult decision slowly transformed a political crisis into an engineering achievement. The greatest victories in technology are often invisible because they happen quietly inside laboratories, long before customers notice them. Success did not arrive through one dramatic announcement. It arrived through thousands of ordinary days solving extraordinary problems. Whether HarmonyOS expands globally or not, the world has already witnessed something many experts once considered impossible. Competition rarely destroys great technology overnight. Instead, it quietly forces everyone to become stronger.
The future of computing will likely belong to companies capable of adapting faster than the world around them changes.
For users, the best technology is rarely defined by politics. It is defined by reliability, security, and everyday experience.
One decision made years ago unexpectedly created a new competitor. History has a remarkable way of rewriting its own endings.
Windows remains the world's dominant desktop operating system, strengthened by decades of trust, compatibility, and continuous innovation. Replacing that foundation will take years, because businesses rarely abandon systems that continue performing exactly as expected.
Every successful technology carries enormous momentum, built quietly through decades of reliability, rather than dramatic headlines.
Huawei never needed to replace Windows everywhere. Creating a credible alternative was already a remarkable achievement.
History often rewards companies willing to invest patiently, while everyone else expects immediate results. 5 years of unseen engineering changed far more than one company. They changed how the industry viewed technological independence. Some of history's biggest technological breakthroughs happen without applause, hidden inside ordinary nights filled with extraordinary persistence. For Huawei's engineers, success was never guaranteed. It had to be earned, one solved problem after another.
Technology has always evolved through competition, adaptation, and unexpected moments that permanently reshape the future.
Whether HarmonyOS succeeds globally or remains regional, one fact is already impossible to ignore. The impossible has become reality. History rarely changes in a single moment. It changes quietly, one decision, one invention, and one generation at a time. Neither system represents the end of the other. Together, they represent the beginning of a far more competitive computing era. Behind every operating system are countless engineers whose names history may never remember, yet whose work quietly shapes billions of lives. Technology does not reward the loudest company forever. It rewards those prepared to solve tomorrow's problems before anyone else sees them.
Whether this becomes the future of computing or simply another chapter in history, the race has already begun.
One political decision unexpectedly created a technological movement that may influence computing for decades to come. Only time will reveal its full impact. The next chapter of computing will not be written by one company alone. It will be written by everyone willing to challenge the impossible. Perhaps the greatest lesson is this: innovation often grows strongest where the world expects it to disappear. Next, we'll uncover how China achieved what experts believed could never happen, and why the global chip industry may never look the same again.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more untold technology stories, and I'll see you in our next documentary.